And this week is about peace, and so now we're moving even deeper into this idea of you creating the experience of the Christ in you as you. And so one of the things we take in the Advent season is we take the ritual of the Advent candle, the idea of faith, peace, love, and joy, not to be just about Jesus the Christ, but about you, the Christ, as well. I would just like to start off by saying something that's fairly obvious, which is essentially that no one can take your peace from you. What do you mean? Not that obvious. Because I was just thinking, on January 20th this year, many of us gave up our peace, right? Now, I just heard a very interesting statistic. I mean, he's been an interesting president for sure, but 32% of the people are still think he's doing a good job. Of those, 68% of those 32% think he has done nothing wrong. So you can see your opinion could be different than someone else's if you were distracted by what happened on January 20th. It's not a universal. It's what happened in your own mind. Because there are at least 68% of 32 people who are just happy as they can be about it. So there is an option out there if you're distressed about the nature of the way things are going. We choose to give up our peace of mind. It is not taken from us. We choose to give it up. And for all those of you who have given it up, I encourage you to claim it. Take it back. It was yours. No one can take it from you. As you can see from that last example, it's not the external world that makes or breaks peace. It's what happens between your ears that makes or breaks it. Whether you have peace or not is a mental thing. It's not an actual thing. To cultivate the mental conditions, you must practice a peaceful way of being. And the more you practice, the more it becomes your habit. And the more it becomes your habit, the more it happens automatically. So there's several stages to becoming competent at some. One is to know that you're consciously incompetent about it. You're conscious that you're incompetent. Have you heard this? 4 stages? I think it's 4 stages. Consciously incompetent. You're aware that you're giving your peace away and you don't know how to cultivate it. Conscious incompetent. Then you practice and you become consciously competent. So you have to work at it. You do what you can to do it, and it takes work. It doesn't come naturally because you're practiced at something else. But once you become practiced enough, you become consciously competent. You're doing it. You're actually pulling it off. You're becoming peaceful in the midst of everything that's happening, but you're having to work at it, but it's happening. And then finally you reach this final stage, which is unconscious competent, in which it happens automatically. And most of us in this room are unconscious competents when we come to driving, right? Or riding a bicycle, or talking. How do you become a conscious competent? The first step. How do you take this first step now into being peaceful? So let's start with this idea that I think the source of unpeacefulness, seed thought, because it's a mind thing, the seed experience is that you feel separate. That it is not just your body, but your self-definition of who you are. You defend it. And so you look upon all the things that are happening to you in the world, all these events, and you go, I like it, I dislike it, I want this, I don't want that. And you have this whole litany of desires and repulsions you have to keep up because you're trying to maintain, this is who I am. This separate sense of self. And in that is quite the soup for not feeling peaceful. So to get out of this separate sense of self, we must do something different. We must think differently, and we must experience differently. So one way to do that, a beginning way to do that, is to pray for others. And in praying for others, we begin to dissolve the separation between us and them. When they become as important in our minds as we are to ourselves, we have moved a long way toward this universal experience of I'm part of you and you are part of me. And your happiness matters to me as much as my happiness. This is the state of compassion. So now, let's talk about how to do meditation for this. So once again, I think the big problem is that you have a we have a separate sense of self. And to get over that, what we need to do is come to realize that we're part of all that is. Now let's move the mind into oneness. How would you do that? Because it's so conditioned to be a separate thing, and its very first thought is I. When it goes from not working to working, the first thing it says is I. In essence, I experience, I'm doing, I want, something like that. You must move back. You must fool this mind out of thinking about itself and begin to experience from what was prior to it starting to say I. You come back to the one that's before that. So, process is notice that you're noticing, and then notice or pay attention to the one that is noticing. Right? Some of the people call this the witness. Now, if you get to the witness, go just a little further deeper to where you are that awareness itself. Not the witness, because the witness is the beginning of the self, right? It's right at the borderline. Just come a little bit farther back. You begin to drop the identification with the I am blah, 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 and you just come back to the I am. And that is much quieter in there. It's peaceful. So let's put the two together. This one, second one. Put this in the state of this state, or near this state, or on the way to this state of noticing that you are awareness itself. Say your prayers for someone else. There's a vagus nerve that is activated when you pray for others that causes a ripple effect through your nervous system and also secretes oxytocin, I believe is the word, which is has a healing properties which have been found to help you fight diseases. So if you think about this, you have better physical health to go with your mental health if you will practice this deep level of prayer for others.